Welcome to the Functional Health Coaching Show, where we are here to support and answer your questions so that you can help people on a deeper level get real results and grow your health coaching business. Do you have questions you want to ask live on the show? You can call in every Friday at 2 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time to 1-347-637-1378. Are you looking to increase your credibility and grow your health coaching business using functional lab testing and data-driven protocols so that you can confidently solve health issues? Well, we have the course for you. Go to fdn.today/show to learn more and sign up today. Okay, let's join today's episode.
Happy Friday, guys. Thanks for tuning in once again on the FDN Fantastic Friday Call, otherwise known as the Functional Health Coaching Show. I'm your host, Brandon Mollet. I've got my co-host here, Ryan Monahan, and we're going to have a good time talking with you guys. Hopefully some live callers on this call today, supporting you in wherever you are with the old FDN process. If you've graduated, been certified, and you're out there working and need some support and some help on a case or with some aspect of business, we're happy to answer those questions. Or if you're a trainee and you have some questions about concepts or things in the course, we're happy to talk then. Or if you're just looking at taking this amazing course, I started about 11 years ago now, then we're happy to give you some insight into how we work and who we are as an organization and a company and a certification course. So it's good to be with you. I was out last week, and I think Ryan and Brandy took over and did an awesome call there. But good to be reconnected with you guys. This is kind of just part of my Friday afternoons, has been for a few years now, and thoroughly enjoy it. Like answering questions and giving you guys some guidance and support. And like I said, I've got my co-host Ryan here with me, so he's always good for terrific answers as well. So looking forward to talking with you guys today. Hey, Ryan, how are you, man?
Doing all right. How are you?
Doing well. Just
cool.
Watching the leaves start to change and things cool down a little bit, and just getting into a little different season. Nice change of pace.
We've got a lot of raking to do here at our house.
I thought you guys are probably a little ahead of us on the leaves falling. So they're still on the trees, but they're starting to change. No, nothing's fallen yet in Kentucky.
Right.
Well, awesome, guys. Well, this guy's a live call. You can call in and ask a question, make a comment. You want to add to the discussion. You guys can lend your clinical experience, your training, your research to this call as well. So if somebody calls in and we have a good question and you want to add to the answer that we gave, that's awesome too. So we all work together to help each other out to make us better practitioners and have better results with our clients. So the number to do that, if you do want to call in, is 347-637-1378. Again, 347-637-1378. And just hit 1 on your keypad, and you'll come up on the switchboard here. I'll say that you want to come on, and I'll probably just call out your area code and get your name, and you can ask a question or two depending on relevance there or timing, whoever people are in line. And I see a lot of you guys popping on right now just as I speak, so thanks for spending an hour here with us or however much time you can do. So again, call in and ask a question. I do have questions always written in or on our Facebook pages that we'll grab, and we'll talk about some concepts and cover as much as we can one day. I should say it's October 9th, 2020, so big thing on my radar here, and Ryan's too, I know, is the FDN conference coming up. Hopefully it is on your radar as well. So we're just a few weeks away from what's going to prove to, I think, be an amazing virtual conference. So I think it's pretty remarkable, the change and the shift that the team's been able to do so quickly in the midst of everything going on, to be able to bring an amazing conference to you. And because we can't have it in person, do it virtual and have all the really exciting aspects of making it as close as we can to being together, doing it virtually, that we're going to be able to pull off. So look forward to talking with some of you guys. We're going to be doing some 10-minute mentoring sessions. We're going to be doing some networking sessions, kind of popping in and out. So you'll see me and Ryan definitely. If you're not there, hanging out, checking in with us there in San Diego, you'll see us virtually. We'll be around and having a good time, and just looking forward to it. So end here of October. So coming up real quick, and it's not too late to get tickets. So if you do want to come and be a part, you can still purchase tickets and be a part of that. One of the best things I think you can do for your business and for growth as an FDN practitioner, as a professional, I guess overall just personal growth as well, but as your business, as a business person, as most of us are business people or entrepreneurs when you get into this business or this industry. Some of us are one-person shows. We do a lot. So if we can help you improve that in any way, it's part of what that course and the conference is all about. So that's coming up, so check details there. And then, Ryan, anything on the FDNP side that we should know about?
Nothing in particular, other than it's the place to be. If you're an FDN graduate and you want to, level up to, your next level of expertise and getting lots of good clinical advice and ongoing support, business-wise, clinically speaking, we're in that group every day answering clinical questions and doing advanced webinars. And, Jennifer Woodward and I do a bi-weekly session on what we call it quick and nerdy, and we just, spend about 20 or 30 minutes going into one topic and into a deeper level of depth and detail. So the past few sessions, we've actually been talking about methylation and going into some of the nuances and myths of methylation and what it means, what it doesn't mean. So we have a lot of fun over there. We dive into all kinds of different topics. This coming Tuesday, we're going to be looking at some of the Access Lab stress and hormone panels and doing a little case study in helping our community with interpreting that test because, there have been a good deal of questions around it since it's a newer test. And, there was a little bit of a shake-up there, of course, in the FDN community. But, we always want to emphasize to our FDNs that the principles are, of course, what matter most, and we're also there to help you along in understanding the nuances of these tests that come along. So you definitely want to be there, guys. If you're not in the group, come and join us at AFDNP. It's you get a lot of value for your investment, so it's kind of a no-brainer in my opinion.
Yes, I'd say for sure. We've put money into our business, and that is definitely one of the best values out there. And you can just, I think what I like about it is that you can just kind of turn off the filter a little bit and just soak in what's being said because you know who's talking about it, the principles are being followed. You've got good mentors, lots of expertise, lots of time spent doing this, studying these things more than you've had. And they're going to distill that down into the practical application and things that you need. So you can just take that and incorporate it right into what you're doing. So my time is pretty valuable. Hopefully you guys feel that as well about your own time. If I can pay some money and save a whole lot of time, ultimately I come out ahead with my time and with the money. So when you can take somebody that has years in training and experience and they distill that down into a 20 to 30 minute segment that brings clarity to a situation, boy, that's super valuable. So value your time and invest a little bit into AFDNP and be part of just supporting what we're doing as an organization as well. So yeah, it's for what you get out of it 100%. You have to be getting value out of something to keep doing it, right? That's just life. But you're also supporting just the overall mission of FDN and growing our industry and what we're doing and making more people aware of this as an option and a way, in my opinion, in most cases, the best way to improve health. And so educated people, that's the nicest thing to work with. That's the nicest type of person that already has a good understanding of basically how you work, and they're just looking for somebody to walk them through that process that has training in that. So by being a part of AFDNP, you're just furthering the mission and creating actually a larger potential client base for yourself. That's another benefit there. So it's just spreading the word is the part of the mission of AFDNP. So, all right. Well, hey, we've got a couple of graduates this week. We do want to congratulate, and we'll be seeing a lot more here, I think, in the next couple months. We've got a whole lot of written finals that are being turned in, and then I've got Shannon Plummer giving me a hand also with some of these verbal finals to accommodate you guys as quickly as you can. You don't have to wait forever. Most of you guys don't want to do it the next day, but you do want to do it within a week or two of getting back your written final. So I think we'll have a pretty good surge of graduates here. Usually we do toward this time of year because everybody wants to get done before we get into the holidays and accomplish that. So we'll do our best we can to accommodate you guys. But we've got a couple here this week that we want to say a big congratulations to. And we're staying over here on the West Coast. So we've got Renee Bergman from San Francisco, California, and then Kristen Barrett, and she's from Washington State. So, girls, congratulations. Great job. Good stuff. Love it. Love to see those names out there because we do need an army of FDN practitioners. A lot of us have waiting list practices, so people are out there and they want help, and so we need as many of you guys out there certified, ready to go, and making a difference. It sounds cliche or cheesy, but we're making a difference in the world, and hopefully you feel that. That's part of why you got into this. You probably went through your own health challenge. I would say 98% of people that signed up for this course had their own health challenge, and that pain and that suffering and those lessons, we don't want to waste that. So if we can help some other people for those situations there, then that's a big call or a mission or a life's purpose, to do that. That's why I feel, every day, not only just, mentoring and doing this call, but with my clients. Hopefully that's a guiding thing that propels you and motivates you forward is the impact we get to have on people's lives. And those two ladies right there, they're going to start to do that in even more and greater way as they grow and they start to incorporate FDN lab testing and principles into what they do. So congratulations, and thanks again, guys, for joining us on the call. If you want to call in and ask a question, I've got a couple lined up here already, which is great. We'll grab 610 area code here in a second, but the number to call in again is 347-637 and 1378. And again, one on the keypad, and we'll bring you on for a question. So, all right, Ryan, if you're ready, we'll go live. We'll grab our first question.
All right. I'm excited. Let's do it.
All right. So 610. What's your name there, 610?
Oh, this is Alexandra. Hi.
Wow.
I actually was a former client of Ryan, several times actually.
What's up, Alexandra? Good to hear your voice.
Yeah, I know. I was actually just thinking about it. I was thinking about questions I was going to ask, and I was thinking that I learned the hard way that Ryan is always right. Because I actually had
question.
I had issues with mold and kind of went back down the mold cycle recently. So, but anyway, that's not what I called about. I have a family member that has Lyme disease. So I was wondering if you guys could just speak to that in terms of what, if you've ever worked with anyone with Lyme disease and what FDN can do for them. I'm guessing that Biocidin is useful, but I'm obviously still learning. So I was just curious, if you guys could speak about that, if you've ever worked with anyone that has Lyme disease.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So Lyme disease can be pretty nuanced and tricky. And when you're looking at someone with Lyme, usually they're pretty deeply entrenched in dysfunction. So I would say it's not that, FDNs are not equipped to help someone with Lyme disease, but, it may require some additional care and detail into a more complex case like that. But all those fundamentals of DRESS are still going to go a long way. So with someone with Lyme or mold illness, for example, one of the primary questions that I'm always thinking about is why is this person so immunocompromised to begin with, right? That they've developed full-blown Lyme disease. What's making them an ideal host, right? So one primary example of that, if you're looking at gut testing, for example, if you're looking at a GI map, you might see that person have very, very low secretory IgA. And we know that percent of our immune system is in the gut, right? And that if our secretory IgA response is very, very low or suppressed, then that's going to make us more vulnerable to pathogens and infections because from an immune perspective, we're not able to put up that fight. right? Like the immune system is not strong enough to fight off bugs and infections and that sort of thing. So, I think even some FDNs, I would say, can get a little bit caught up in kind of the game of chasing after bugs, and they may forget all the things that we could do to support the immune system's innate ability to fight infection, right? Because we have to consider how they got there to begin with, and how to prevent them from progressing in a direction of dysfunction in the future, right? So that they stay well. We don't want to just help people get better in the short term. We want to make sure they understand that they have a set of tools to remain healthy and to keep their immune system healthy. So what that is going to look like from one individual to the next is going to be highly individualized and require running all those core labs and looking at all the clues and puzzle pieces. So, someone with Lyme may very likely be immunocompromised. I would almost argue that's almost a given. Mold, you had mentioned mold, that I've seen that often be a confounding variable with Lyme illness. Some people actually believe that mold is kind of the initial domino, the immune system in the wrong direction, right? And that actually allows Lyme to kind of proliferate or take over. So there are some people that believe that you can't fully address Lyme unless you're also addressing mold and mycotoxins in the system. Not to say I'm convinced that's true for everybody, but I do. When someone comes to me with Lyme in their history, I'm always thinking about that in the back of my mind, of looking to see if there might be a mold pattern or a mycotoxin pattern, and if that's contributing. I would recommend checking out this guy, Dr. Dietrich Klinghardt. He's got some really interesting things to say about Lyme. I'll leave it at that, because he's got, he's got some pretty interesting opinions on it. And I've often, I've watched a few of his YouTube videos or lectures on Lyme, and he's got some really interesting functional kind of perspectives on Lyme and how to potentially address it holistically. That being said, yeah, there is some, you had mentioned biocidin, and I know there were some studies, I want to say like out of Finland or somewhere in the Netherlands, either the Netherlands or Scandinavia, that was done using the liposomal form of biocidin and showing it to be effective at eradicating Lyme. So you could probably find that information right on Biobotanical Research's website. Right. I would never say just that alone going to be, that's kind of just like treating the Lyme, right? So that can be part of an overall dress strategy. But I would say one of the most important things is going to be really, really dialing in, even more so than someone with just mild to moderate dysfunction. You'll probably really have to work with a person like that doing a lot of troubleshooting. They might tend to be more sensitive to supplements, might be more prone to die-off reactions or Herxheimer reactions. So someone like that might be a tricky person to take on if they were your first client, but that's where it might help to team up with an FDN that has more experience in that arena, or even with a Lyme literate doctor.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, that person also lives with a smoker. They don't smoke, but I was wondering if the smoke could also be a major contributing factor in general, just weakening the immune system. So that could be part of it too.
Oh yeah, without a doubt. Yeah, for sure. And I've seen people who have grown up living around smokers, or who have even smoked themselves in the past, and looking at hair tissue mineral analysis results. Not uncommon to see arsenic or cadmium, some of these heavy metals that can be found in tobacco. So that's another thing that you might not think about, but with a history of smoking, you'll usually see a fair amount or decent amount of heavy metals in the system. And heavy metals, you want to talk about disrupting immune function or just causing all kinds of metabolic chaos. A lot of heavy metals, like mercury, for example, is small enough to cross the blood-brain barrier. And so you can see with some of these heavy metals like mercury and aluminum, a lot of signs of neurotoxicity. So, anything from brain fog to ADHD to anxiety and depression, and even in the long term issues like Parkinson's and Alzheimer's. Toxicity, I think, can play a big part in it too, just general toxicity, heavy metals, cigarette smoke, pesticides, all these things that we try to teach our clients about and how to avoid and how to keep their health optimal. Because, if your body is a toxic soup, that's going to make you an ideal host for pathogens to become opportunistic and take over. Right. So, for example, one thing that I've heard Dr. Klinghardt say is that with Lyme disease, he suspects that actually the vast majority of the population actually has some of these bacterial infections like Bartonella or Babesia that may trigger Lyme. But it's really like a matter of everything else that's going on in their system that allows that bug to kind of, I guess for lack of a better term, change its behavior and become opportunistic. So if that was true, you have to ask this kind of question, like what's the difference between someone who has some of these Lyme infections or co-infections in their system, but they're totally asymptomatic, versus someone that has those same exact bugs or bacteria, and is totally like their health is just a wreck and they're totally immune compromised, right? So it's this kind of hints at this idea of terrain theory, which is kind of this idea that it's not necessarily the bug that makes you sick. It's not necessarily the individual species of bacteria or a parasite or whatever it might be, but it's the overall environment in your body, right? Everything from nutrient deficiencies to leaky gut to low secretory IgA, hormone imbalances. Like when the environment becomes disrupted, that can tip the scale, so to speak, and allow a certain pathogen to turn pathogenic, right? So
is that sort
if you think about it this way, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no. Is that sort of true with everything? Like even in terms of mold that if you were healed, you should be able to tolerate some levels of mold. Like, is that sort of just the case with everything that you've got more going on if like the mold bothers you too?
To some extent, like I wouldn't say someone should go intentionally renting out or buying a home that had a really serious mold issue. It can work both ways, and so I would say that it works both ways. Meaning that if you live in a moldy environment and you're getting mold and mycotoxins colonizing your system, then that in itself is going to cause immune disruption. But at the same time, as someone that's really resilient and hardy and is really taking care of their health, may have a higher threshold or tolerance for being exposed to those sorts of things. But I think it really just depends on the individual. At a certain point, I think anyone would break in that scenario. Maybe one person that's super sensitive, after just a couple months or less of living in a moldy home, they become really ill. Whereas maybe for another individual with a different set of genetics and a different health history, maybe it's years and they don't develop any kind of adverse reactions or symptoms.
Right.
So I think it works both ways, but what this kind of idea of terrain theory tells us is that just looking at this idea that the individual germ or bug is totally the only thing that's responsible for what's making us is maybe a little bit reductionist, and it fails to look at the system as a whole, which is how FDNs work. We think very systemically and holistically, and that's why we work as generalists and try to heal the body in a non-specific manner. And I feel that's really, in my opinion, I believe strongly that's the best approach to take. I don't think you're going to succeed. For example, if you just try to kill off mold or you just try to kill off Lyme, and you're not also optimizing someone's diet and lifestyle, and also, helping balance their hormones and all these things that are these homeostatic controls that are needed to be in balance for someone to experience optimal health.
Right. And it can take years.
It can,
to get back on track.
For some people.
Yeah.
But, hopefully not. I think our goal is to try to get people feeling as good as they possibly can as quickly as we can help them do so.
Right. But,
in part, that also depends on the client's willingness to be compliant with all the recommendations. And, that's why we train to do the sales calls the way we do, right? To make sure that when we're taking someone on, that they are totally committed and that they're a 10 out of 10. Because as I'm sure, as you're going through the course, you're starting to see, we ask a lot of people, we ask them to change a lot of things about their diet and their lifestyle and their sleep patterns and how much movement they're getting. And also, taking various different supplements at different times of the day. So someone has to be ready for that journey. They have to be in that right mindset. But, hopefully for most people, it's not going to take years. And if it does take years, at least you can hope to see some incremental progress along the way, right? It's not as though they're not going to be at least moving in the right direction during that time period. Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah. Thank you so much. I have other questions, but I could call it another time because there's a line. So.
There's only one behind you, so I think we got time if you go and ask another quick one, and then I'll grab 404 area code after you, Alexander. So go ahead.
Yeah, this is a really quick one. Just as a new student in the course, I feel like my brain kind of feels like a chandelier, going off in so many different directions, and because there's so much other stuff that you can read outside the course. So I was just wondering, I know there's the Point Institute books, and those are really helpful. If there's just a few books that we should read, because I feel like there's a temptation to just keep reading all these other books because I want to learn so much, and then I'll never finish. Well, so that's just just a new student question.
I would say that's a good problem to have, wouldn't you, Brandon?
Yeah, you're right. Well, we want to be inquisitive. You're right. We want to learn. But you're right. You can chase a lot of rabbits, go down a lot of trails with the course, because I know I did with the gut. So when I got into the modules where we talk about gut health, I took a few-day little rabbit trail and got a little deeper into anatomy and things that I felt like that for me personally, I felt like I needed to understand a little bit more in depth, or also was just sort of fascinating to me as well. So I spent a little time there. But that definitely is maybe a trap you can fall into a little bit, and it's really hard because most of us coming into the course, we're kind of learn freaks. We love to learn stuff. We like to pick up on all the different science and get in depth in things. So it is a challenge. It definitely is something to be aware of. What I would do, I would say, I would try to go through all the videos more or less as quickly as you can, and try not to stop. And because you're going to go through the videos probably a couple times, at least, I would say. So I would go through everything in a pretty quick kind of just zip over through the videos as quickly as you can. There's a lot of hours there, but get the overall feel of things. Then, as you prepare for your practicals, because really when it comes down to it, and hopefully that's most people, my hope for them taking this course is that it isn't just an exercise in academics and learning. It's actually a really practical, applicable system to make a change with people in their health. So the practicals with your mentors, that's really where the rubber is going to meet the road. Things are going to be solidified. So some of those concepts you don't quite have down or you're not quite clear on, those will come together with the practicals. And I would say as you prep for your practicals, you're probably going to be going back and you're going to be watching different parts of the course in preparation for those. And then maybe if you feel like at that point, when you're done with the practicals, you want to go deeper, you can. I think that love for learning and for knowledge probably really never goes away with most of us as FDN practitioners. So even when you complete the course, the suggestion that Reed gave to me and my mentor gave to me and I give people now is go out there and find your first 10 clients. that's really what you want to start with, because we have amazing offerings. Join AFDNP and go find your first client, because we have awesome advanced courses. We have more things you can learn about, and those can be helpful. But you've really got to get really good at a good foundation, lay the really good foundation. And once a good foundation's laid, then you can add some more things to it. So I feel like it's in the doing that is really where things really come the most together. So I would just try to avoid too many of those rabbit trails, or limit yourself, because ultimately I feel like there is a kind of law of diminishing returns. At some point, what you're learning will never be asked for by your clients. It will never help you in the practical application. It really won't do much for you as far as practical terms. And so everybody's kind of got to draw their line when it comes to that.
But it is exciting, though, to be in a career where there's an infinite amount that you can learn.
Oh, totally.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
It's always changing and improving, and it's a good thing.
Yeah.
And
but you're not alone.
I would add to that. Go ahead, guys.
I said you're not alone in that feeling. That's for sure.
Yeah. Well, because I saw the book list and I was emailing Dad, and I said, "Oh, great, I'm going to read all the books," and she was like, "No, don't do that." I started buying them, and then I was like, "I'm never going to finish the course."
Exactly. Put the blinders on.
Yeah, one piece of practical advice I can add to this conversation is that, I started with my own health journey when I started my own practice after I graduated from FDN. I started with what I knew, which was my own experience being diagnosed with Hashimoto's. And that's kind of where I started as a foundation. And I decided that was going to primarily be my niche. And that was how I was going to market myself, was by, positioning myself as an expert in that topic of Hashimoto's. So I think that can really help define an area of expertise or focus, right? Rather than, it can be great to go down some of these rabbit holes for your own education and interest, but at the same time, I think it can really help to go deeper than wide, right? Go a kind of a 2 inches wide and a mile deep, right? Into one topic and become an expert on that. And then you can kind of build off of that as you go along. But I think that can really help with focus, and especially with being really confident when you're working with whatever your niche happens to be. You're going to, be an expert on that one topic, rather than having read a book on reproductive health and a book on Hashimoto's and then a book on Lyme and then a book on mold, right? And again, that's all stuff I love, building on my knowledge, and I thrive on continual learning. But I would consider starting with kind of one area that you really are passionate about.
Okay, so maybe thinking about that, like what area?
Sure, yeah.
Okay,
and I
thank
apologize,
you,
guys, for my dog barking in the background.
It's okay. All right, thank you so much.
Awesome, Alexandra. Thanks for calling in.
Yep. Bye-bye.
Cool. Great questions. All right.
Awesome. Yeah.
Well, about 25 minutes left in the call, so plenty of time here. So I'm going to grab 404 area code. So 404, what's your name, 404?
Hi, I'm Desiree.
Hey, Desiree.
Hey, Desiree.
Hi. So I have kind of a similar question as the last caller, and I'm sure that you're probably going to approach it in a similar way, which is that we should treat the whole body specifically. But for a particular symptom, I have a family member who's a relatively young male with prostatitis, which is essentially an infection. So, of course, we need to look at what kind of immune issues are going on there where an infection can take hold. But I wanted to know if either of you had any experience working with clients or knew any of their information kind of specifically related to prostatitis.
Mm-hmm.
I'll be honest, I don't have any experience with that particular condition. Do you, Brandon?
Well, not extreme amounts. I wouldn't say I'm an expert there. Have I had clients with some level of prostate, inflammation or infection, cancers, things like that? I've had a handful. Yeah. So, Statistically, I've heard that in the next 10 years or so, that a majority of men will have some level of prostate inflammation or enlargement, and rates of prostate cancer are going to go kind of through the roof. And we can kind of say that about a lot of diseases and things like that. But that seems to be one in particular that is on the rise as far as what I've seen. And I think it's because of all of these factors we were talking about that Ryan was going through. So the best approach is, I would say, a whole body approach, because if you're looking at this situation where you've got inflammation that's going on, so you've always got to ask the question, what's driving inflammation? Or if there's infection, what's driving the infection? Can we do some things in particular, specifically to help with the gland and support in that way? Yeah, I've got a few things I'll recommend here in a second, but the ultimate question is, why is it happening? I think even sometimes people will go and they'll get a diagnosis, and sometimes that has very limited benefit, because I'll have people say, oh yeah, doctor said I have arthritis. Okay, good. So where are you from there? So what's causing the arthritis? What's causing that situation? Or I've got the diabetes diagnosis. I know I have diabetes now. Okay, cool. So there's some treatments you can do, of course, medically, but why did you get diabetes in the first place? What's the terrain like? What's all the environmental factors and things that have come together to cause that particular malfunction? Because we've all got our weak links, and we have different weak links. So every person's body, like in this case of your family member, his weak link happens to be prostate. It's not for me. I don't think it's for Ryan, but we all have our weak links. And so you've got a kind of twofold process. You can maybe explain to him, thinking about this, is that prostate for him is a weak link. So we want to, if we can, most we can, is shore up that link specifically and to make that link a little bit stronger. We're all going to have some areas that just never will be as strong as somebody else. And then also, we've got that tension pulling on that chain. So if we can reduce the tension pulling on that chain, where it has some slack in that chain, well, there's not so much strain on those weak links anymore. And the way that you put some slack in the chain is you reduce stressors. And as you would do with FDN, that's our whole goal, right? The DRESS protocol reduces stress. So 100% a whole body approach. I don't know exactly 100% what factors are there. They could be gut factors, can be immune factors, can be metals, could be food sensitivities, could be microorganisms, hormonal. Really, all these things can come together. It really doesn't matter so much what's causing, is that you want to do a complete workup, look at everything in the body, 100%. Now, specifically to a prostate issue, supplementation-wise, that can be helpful. Anything that is more on the, of course, anti-inflammatory or inflammation modulating side. So several products out there, they're really good. So things that might have holy basil in there, or turmeric, curcumin, things of that nature can help with overall inflammation. A lot of products will combine things like saw palmetto, pumpkin seed, stinging nettle, things like that are really kind of men's prostate-focused products. Those, I've had people before that, especially older gentlemen, that I kind of joke, sometimes older guys get a little bit cranky because they have to wake up and pee 5 or 6 times a night, so they never get good rest, and so that will make you a little bit cranky. So when you can do some things to reduce inflammation there and the swelling enlargement of the prostate, you won't have the pressure on there, won't feel like you have to use the bathroom as often. So I've seen some quick turnarounds with just pulling out inflammatory foods and supporting with some good inflammation modulators there. If there's infection, I know you can also do biocidin capsules as a suppository. I've heard the recommendation before from biobotanical research on that, so you're trying to get some of those herbs that are a little closer to the action. Another possibility there. So there are some, I think, immediate things you could do to kind of bring some relief and support the body, and not just cover up symptoms. Those are those things I recommended there. Those are truly things that are working on some root causes and supporting the system. But that, depending on the age there, that could be a problem, long term for that person. So, and could lead to some, things that you don't want later on. So, best, no time like the present, if you can convince him and help him make that decision to go ahead and make the lifestyle change and do everything he needs to do to support the health and then support the train and support that weak link and reduce some of the tension on that chain. He's definitely going to be better off.
Thank you for that. I definitely plan on working with him as a client once I graduate and doing all the tests on him. So I think that'll be helpful.
Yes. I think. What's the age approximately?
He is 35.
Okay. Yeah. So good. So I think people in their 20s and 30s pretty quickly.
Due to stress. So I think it's definitely like stressors that can be reduced. I have another quick question that's on a different topic, and I actually asked this just during the call with Reed a little bit ago, but I wanted to get your take on it. Working with clients who are vegan, vegetarian, not interested, willing to change their diet. Are there any lab markers to point to a slow or a fast oxidizer, or is it basically just kind of the little questionnaire you can take from the metabolic typing diet? And how to deal with clients who may be vegan or vegetarian and not really
I have some thoughts on that.
Yeah, sure.
You said like on an ethical basis?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay. So I have some experience with this because I'm a former vegan yogi. And in 2010, I went to India. I stayed in an ashram and was eating vegetarian, and I came back and I did a 4-month yoga teacher training, and I'm even familiar with all the literature too. Like I've read the China study from Dr. Campbell. I've read Eating Animals and all that kind of classic vegan literature. And ultimately, long story short, I was diagnosed with Hashimoto's. In 2012, my health kind of spiraled downward, and I realized I needed to make some really huge changes. And that was one of the biggest challenges for me was the ethical concerns of eating meat again. And I can point you to a couple resources which I've shared with the small handful of vegetarian or vegan clients that I've had. And one is a woman named Diana Rogers. She completely changed my life and my perspective on eating animal protein. And she actually just recently released a book a few months back with Rob Wolf called Sacred Cow. I can't think of a better resource or a book for someone who's vegan to at least to read and consider like a different perspective or opinion. And what's interesting about Diana Rogers is that she grew up on a biodynamic farm. And she saw like that whole life cycle of pasture-raised cows and pigs and how they fertilize the soil, and so on and so on. And there's a couple points she made, which I'll share with you about the ethical concerns, which I had never, as a vegan, I had never even thought about or considered. One is she says that there's no such thing as a bloodless diet. So she actually, there's a lot of really compelling figures and statistics in that Sacred Cow book, where she talks about in the industrialized process of farming for grains and corn and soy and wheat, that millions and millions, like it's an absurd amount of number of like small farm animals, like little rabbits and voles and prairie dogs and things like that, that get caught up in this, I apologize if it's kind of gruesome, but that get caught up in these large tractors or farming equipment, and that it's a total illusion to deny that happens by the time your soy or your grains or whatever it might be get to your plate. So
that's so depressing.
It is, but the reality that's undebatable. There's no such thing as a bloodless diet. Unless maybe you're growing all of your own plants in your backyard. I think that's the only way you could truly, with integrity, say that you're actually a vegan, right? The other thing she had said this was on a podcast she did on Chris Kresser's podcast. Basically this idea, this kind of like romantic myth that in nature that animals die this like beautiful like Disney death, and that their souls just kind of fly up into heaven. She said, she says that growing up as a farmer, she has seen cows getting eaten alive by wolves, or die terrible deaths from infectious diseases when they're not being cared for by farmers on pastured lands, right? If they're just kind of left to roam free, they often get eaten alive, or die of a terrible infectious disease if we're not there to care for them, right? So the unfortunate fact is, and this is something I had to kind of come to realize on my own, is that like we're really, really detached from that food cycle, right? Like most of us grow up most of our lives like never having seen where our food comes from, right? So contributed to this sort of rift, or this kind of polarized debate between like paleo and the vegan community. But those are just those are a couple things of many others that I've considered on the ethical side. There is that, like on a pastured farm, like that cow or pig or those chickens, they're taken care of and they're protected their whole lives, until they're hopefully given a humane death. But otherwise, that might not be the case. So then, that just covers the ethical side. Then, in that book, they also cover like the nutritional arguments and the health arguments, and as well as the environmental concerns. And they break all three of those arguments down like really, really eloquently. So I would check out that book, or even just like her website, or even start with the podcast interview where Chris Kresser had Diana Rogers on his show.
Thank you. I will do so.
Cool. Did you have another question? I feel like you had another question that maybe I got kind of stuck on that whole vegetarian thing.
No. I think that's it. I mean, really, I guess just kind of how would you, and like, let's say you did make this case, and then your client still was adamant about being vegan or vegetarian, would you just let them know, we'll do the best with the rest of the dress protocol as best as we can, but like this diet is not where I would like it to be, and, you're not following my full recommendation, essentially.
You can, of course, you make sure in any case, even if it's not about this issue of a vegan diet, like one thing I'm always firm with a client on is that if I can't guarantee them any results if they don't follow my recommendations, right? Sometimes you have to kind of lay down the law that way. But to your specific question, one thing I have done there have been a few times where I've had vegetarian clients come to me, and then what I've done is just let the data kind of speak for itself. So in showing them their lab results, I know through having been a vegan and having kind of studied the potential effects on physiology, like I know all the things to look for, like wow, your serum B12 is at like a 200. That is really, really critically low. Or your ferritin level is below a 10. Like your iron is so low because you're not eating animal protein that you probably actually need iron shots, right, to get your iron levels back up. And there's a dozen of other examples I can show them on the lab work, like how it's affecting them.
Yeah, that was my other question, was the exact markers you would look for to illustrate to someone that, even if they think they're getting everything they need, they're not.
Yeah, I'm mostly looking at certain nutrients. Like some of the more common deficiencies you'll see are zinc, low B12 or really low levels of any B vitamins, low levels of vitamin A, really, really common. If someone has methylation issues and they have like high homocysteine, that gets a little more advanced into this world of methylation. But methylation is dependent on B vitamins, mostly the vast majority of which we get through animal protein. So someone that's vegan or vegetarian is very likely to have very high homocysteine B vitamins. Even just good old-fashioned leaky gut, right? Like, because in order to maintain a healthy gut lining, we need glutamine, right? That's one of the most abundant proteins or amino acids in the body needed to maintain the integrity of the mucosal barrier. So I feel, in my opinion, from what I've seen, you're more likely to see, all the classic signs of intestinal permeability and leaky gut. There's so many things. You might see really low levels of glutathione because glutathione is made up of 3 different amino acids as its building block. And if you're not getting those amino acids from protein, someone's likely to be deficient in glutathione. So I can kind of wrap up by saying this: as someone who's a former vegan, like, I get it. Like, I still have a soft spot, and I'm still, empathic towards people that want to try doing that. But in practice, as much as I've even tried to work within that context and, saying to clients like, hey, like, I don't necessarily think this is the most ideal diet for most people to follow, but let's see what the lab work tells us, and we'll see if we can work with it. But in practice, I just haven't seen it result in very good outcomes on lab work. Another example I can think of is I've worked with a couple vegans that had, on a Dutch test, like a Dutch hormone panel, just have very low hormones all across the board. Low cortisol, low progesterone, low testosterone. And that's likely because they're not getting enough dietary cholesterol to support all their body hormones, right? So that's another thing I've seen. So, I kind of try to take this Jedi mind trick approach where, I'll tell a client that we'll do our best to kind of work within their framework, but at the same time, it's my job and responsibility to, show them where there may be holes in their diet and how it might be affecting their physiology. And I'll use the lab work to illustrate that point, rather than just telling them like, hey, you really need to, no one wants to be like told what to do. But if you can use the lab work as leverage in a sense, you can kind of help them to make that decision for themselves, right? And that's ultimately like the way that I'm always trying to think about working with people is, providing them with this set of tools so that they are empowered to make the choices that they need to make. And I can tell you this, that 9 times out of 10, when I've encountered those cases, that with very little effort, the client's like, oh gosh, I really should start eating some red meat and chicken and fish again. And I'm like, yeah, that might be a good idea. But a lot of times when they see what's going on and you can kind of connect the dots for them, they'll make that decision on their own.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Excellent question. Awesome. Okay. Well, thanks for calling in.
Sure.
Awesome. Yeah, that's a good one. I've kind of been in that camp. I didn't stay super long in the vegan camp. I did for probably a year or so, and I definitely did not thrive there at all. And discovered metabolic typing and FDN around the same time, and tested, and I was definitely a protein type. And it was such a big shift and a change. It was just my rationale for it was for health. I thought that was the healthiest thing to do. It's kind of what you did in the early 2000s, I guess, was go vegan. That was the way to go. Now I probably need to change my diet just in general, yes, but I needed the fat, needed the animal products, and those made such a huge difference. And hopefully the people we bring on to work with us, they're really they're honest seekers. They have honest questions. They really want to do whatever's best for their health. And maybe that's one thing you can kind of, I probably would address that in the very beginning during that onboarding call with the client and address it then instead of later on. So go ahead and hit things up front. Awesome. Okay.
Absolutely.
Good questions here today, guys. Thanks a lot. About 5 minutes left in the call today, so we probably could hit maybe one more quick question. Just looking at the switchboard. You guys are hanging in there all hour. Thanks a lot for doing that, guys. Good to have your energy there to see there's other people listening. So if you guys have a quick question, we'll probably take one more caller, or I may just grab one off the list here, and we'll try to get a quick answer to it. So last call for questions before we wrap up here today, guys. Let's see here. No right hands raised. All right. So talk about this one real quickly. All right. So the person asking here, we're getting into hormone testing and the cortisol to DHEA ratio. The person says, looking for a bit of clarity on the term elevated when it comes to cortisol DHEA ratio. Math is not my thing, they said. When he says the ratio is elevated, what does that actually mean? I get that an optimal ratio could be cortisol at 1.25 and DHEA at 6, and that in this example, cortisol is too high and DHEA is too low. Is it the gap between the two numbers, the 5.4 and the 1, that tells us the ratio is elevated? It's really just terminology I'm trying to get right. I get the concept there. So the cortisol to DHEA ratio on hormone testing there, it's just as simple as taking the cortisol, depending on what test. Sometimes it was the total cortisol, sometimes it's the morning cortisol, and dividing by the DHEA that's there. And with ratios, we just kind of observe that when you have this ratio starts to get elevated, which is typically lowered DHEA, lower than you would want it to be compared to the cortisol, just mathematically it's going to be a bigger number. So as DHEA goes down and cortisol goes up, that's when a person's in a stressed catabolic state. You're going to have that number to go up. So you got the range there that gives us a feel for, hey, kind of where's the cutoff here, where they're in a catabolic state or a kind of a normal state maybe, or maybe not in a catabolic state really at all. So it's one of your gauges for evaluation in the beginning of kind of where this person is, because you're trying to get this feel, right? It's not the only number that you look at. You look at all the numbers in the person, trying to get a feel of really where they're at right now when they're coming to you with this first baseline of test. Are they really, really low and we've got a lot of work to pull them out of where they start out with? Have they done a lot of work already and they're moving in a good direction? They're actually improving. Things are getting better. So where they're at in general, because that, as part of that, is motivating for that person. So test results can be very motivating. They're in a catabolic state and everything else lines up with that, observing what you see. You can kind of say, overall, here's my takeaway of your case right now. Then you can apply all the FDN principles, and it's one marker that you get to look at to see how they're progressing. When you do some retesting, you see if that cortisol to DHEA ratio is becoming more into where you want it to be, as far as in a kind of a normal range there. It's an indication that you've got an improvement with the catabolic state, so the person is overall generally getting healthier. So it's one marker that you look at. It's an important one because generally, as the body comes under more stress and starts to lose the adaptive response, you have the DHEA, and then kind of down from there, your estrogen, your testosterone. Those start to wane a little bit as cortisol sort of goes on the upward side of things. Now, beyond that, you can have a person that has already had that experience already where they've had the higher cortisol, the lower DHEA, and now even cortisol starts to drop a little bit. So sometimes the math doesn't work out where it would look like it's totally in a catabolic state. You've got to look at multiple other factors there. So it's about forming this impression, and that's why we run as many labs as we do, have as many markers as we do, and ask as many questions, because it's your overall impression of what's going on. Very few things do I make a conclusion on based on one marker. That's probably dangerous territory there to get in. You want to look at everything collectively there. So hope that helps on that question, but keep looking at those labs. One of the best ways you can get more confident with it and more familiar is just look at lots and lots more labs and go through the case studies, run labs, and get used to forming that impression. It just becomes a second nature after a while. All right.
Well
that's all
said.
for today, guys. Yeah. Thanks, Ryan. And I appreciate all your good responses here to Alexandra and Desiree. Thanks for the calls, the questions. Those were great. And Renee and Kristen, again, congratulations, graduates this week. And hey, we'll do it again next week. So let's have a great weekend and talk to you soon. Bye-bye.